So we're going to read from a very beautiful verse today from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think this is the theme song for this wonderful gathering. It's a verse that's on the back of all the t-shirts. Very appropriate, simple verse, but so beautiful. So we'll begin. That's Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 11, verse 97. I'll just chant it. It's a very simple verse. So I'll chant it once, and maybe we can just try to chant it together a few times. Bhattacharya kahe e madhura vachan Chaitanya. Okay, go ahead. Yes. Bhattacharya kahe e madhura vachan Chaitanya Rashisti e Prem Sankirtan. Chaitanya Rashisti e Prem Sankirtan. Bhattacharya kahe madhura vachan. Chaitanya Rashisti e Prem Sankirtan. Bhattacharya kahe madhura vachan. Chaitanya Rashisti e Prem Sankirtan. Translation. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied, "This sweet transcendental sound is a special creation of the Lord known as Prem Sankirtan, congregational chanting and love of Godhead. Om Agyanat Vinandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurum Militangena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangan Langaite Girim Yat Kripatamaham Mande Shri Gurundinataranam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchikopaturubhyascha Kripasinabhevcha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So to put this verse into context of what's going on there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is before the Rath Yatra, and Maharaj Prataputra and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya are talking together and trying to devise some plan for how Maharaj Prataputra could get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And while they're having this discussion, Gopinathacharya arrives on the scene and says, you know, there's over 200 devotees are just arriving right now from Bengal. So in great excitement, the three of them run up to the roof of the palace, and they're looking out, and they're seeing all the devotees coming. And Gopinathacharya, he knows everybody from Bengal, so he's pointing out, look, here comes the devotees from Kalinagram, and look, there's Advaitacharya, Murari Gupta, Pundarika Vidyanidhi, just see. And so they're watching. Actually, it's a little bit like yesterday when I came in, and I was like, wow, look who's here. You know, all these beautiful devotees. This is amazing. So, you know, Maharaj Prataputra was astonished by seeing. And so there was a couple of verses before that I'll read so you understand what he's replying to, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So the two verses before, the king said, "Upon seeing all these devotees, I am much astonished, for I have never seen such an effulgence. Indeed, their effulgence is like the brilliance of millions of suns. Nor have I ever heard the Lord's names chanted so melodiously. I have never before seen such ecstatic love, nor heard the vibration of the holy name of the Lord chanted in such a way, nor seen such dancing during Sankirtan. And then this is the reply, and then this is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. This sweet transcendental sound is the special creation of the Lord, known as Prem Sankirtan, congregational chanting in love of Godhead. So it's interesting that Maharaj Prataparudra, he's the king of Orissa, which is a very large area at that time, and he's seen a lot. He's seen a lot of religious performances. He's been around. And yet he is astonished to see the effulgence of these devotees and how they're chanting and dancing. And indeed, it is a special creation. So he's seen ordinary religious activities. He's seen plenty of things go on, but this is something, a special creation, something that he's not seen before, and because it's not been available before. By the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this Prem Sankirtan, which is a Sankirtan that contains the highest spiritual ecstasies that exist, and also contains all the essence of all religious performances and practices. It's Sarvadharmasar. Everything is in this one place, this one mantra, and this one chanting of the holy name in a very simple format, given to the lowest people in the simplest way, in the lowest age of Kali Yuga. So certainly this is a very special creation, and not surprising that he was astonished. And, so here we are. This is our purpose here, to dive into this special creation, try to understand it better. We know theoretically that it's a deep, deep, fathomless ocean of nectar. But, for many of us, we might have just dipped a tiny little toe in it, or we might be just floating on the surface, or we might be riding the waves a bit, or we might have, done some shallow dives. But to really understand the depths of what this special creation is, we have to go to someone who's been down there, who's been down at the bottom of the ocean. And so for that reason, I want to speak about Narottam Das Thakur. Not because, yes, I have a book, and thank you for announcing it, Genevieve, and we do want you to have it, but because his life and his glories are so relevant to what we're trying to do, what we're trying to achieve. He was known, he has the title, the King of Kirtan. Now, I don't think there's any other higher title in this world or any other. So how it is that he, amongst all these amazing associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how it is that he got that title. What was in him? How did he become the King of Kirtan? So I think it's relevant. They always say, even the management gurus, that you should begin with the end in mind. So, we're beginning here some amazing yajna. It's sort of like, like a gathering in the forest of Naimisharanya, with the sages, coming together to do something to uplift really all of us and the whole world. It's no less, it's certainly no less than the sages of Naimisharanya, that so many Vaishnavas coming. It's like the Anandam Buddhibardhanam ocean to look out at all the devotees. But so we're all here, and we're hoping to benefit ourselves and others. And so, to go into, to understand someone who's actually made it, someone who understands it, who's gone down to the depths of that ocean and has seen what is there. And that is Srila Narottam Das Thakur. Of course, so many devotees, but because he has this title, we want to connect this verse and try to draw out. I don't want to tell his whole life story or anything. Neither we have time but just try to draw out some of those the qualities and the characteristics that were there in him in a profound way, so that he was able and became enabled to be the king of Kirtan. So we'll try to just point out specific qualities that will, push us forward, that are required in order to actually go deep into the Sankirtan Yajna. We know that it's not just, the style of our kirtan or the tune or the beat or the musical accomplishment, but it's the condition of our heart. And so understanding what are the elements that need to be in there to really get the most benefit. So, exploring Srila Narottam Das Thakur, I think, it will hopefully help us, give us some insight to what's required to really go deep. So to begin with, probably most of you know something about Narottam Das Thakur as one of the greatest acharyas in our sampradaya. And he was born in the town of Khetri, which was a very wealthy, prosperous, beautiful place at the time, and born into a very aristocratic and religious and very learned family. His father and his mother were the Raj and the Rani of Khetri. So he was born, he was on the trajectory to become the king of Khetri. So he was a prince of the town, and he was the only son. So of course, the only son in any Indian family, that's like a big thing. But what to speak of the king? And he was elderly. They were elderly couple. They had no children. So, he was very, very pampered and protected and given everything to develop. And much loved in the whole town, the little Raj Kumar Naru. And everyone knew him. And then something happened to change that trajectory. Very big change. One day he was a little boy looking out the window of his palace, and he saw that there were many pilgrims, that very often the pilgrims stopped in Khetri on their way to the Rath Yatra and back. And Krishnananda Datta was known that he was very generous and he would give facilities to all the passing through pilgrims. So he saw that there was a whole bunch of pilgrims that they had just come from Jagannath Puri, and they were there in these makeshift. He was looking out over the pandal where they were laying down their mats, and he started to study their faces. And he was thinking, what did they see in Jagannath Puri that made their faces shine like that? And he was very intrigued by, in the same way as Maharaj Prataprutta was, enchanted by seeing the shining, the effulgence of the devotees. So little Naro is looking out and he's thinking, look, they're so bright. What did they see? It reminds me also when I first saw the devotees in 68, I think, in Golden Gate Park, they were chanting. And I was looking and thinking, they really are like shining, and their eyes are so bright, and where are they? They're somewhere I've never been before. And it was so attractive, to see that effulgence of the devotees. So Narottam was seeing this, and he wanted to go out. He wanted to be with them. He was drawn to those pilgrims. And so he asked, and his guard took him out, and he wandered amongst the pilgrims, and he came across, and he saw that a very elderly devotee with many, many devotees around, and he was speaking the glories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates. And Narottam was drawn, his heart was drawn like a magnet. So he sat down and began to listen. And that was the beginning of the end for Narottam. He started to hear about the glories of Mahaprabhu, the beginning of the end of his material life, not his, the beginning of his profound spiritual life. And he was so attracted that he's, please, tell me more. And Krishnadas was a little narrow. Of course, it's very charming when small kids are attracted and they like to hear. So he was enchanted by this little Rajkumar, and he said, no, I'll come every day. I'll come to your palace and I'll tell you everything. He said, but even if I spoke with 1,000 tongues for 1,000 years, I could never tell you all the glories of the associates of Mahaprabhu, and what to speak of Mahaprabhu himself. So Narottam was very excited. So this began a relationship where this Krishnadas, who was a Gaudiya Vaishnava, who had associated, he knew everybody, he knew all about all the Goswamis in Vrindavan, and he would come every day, and he would just talk about, this is Rupa Goswami, this is Sanatana Goswami, Lokanath Goswami, and Narottam was enchanted. And of course, his parents they thought it was wonderful that, look, he's so pious, such a pious boy, he's attracted. But what happened gradually, that Narottam became so immersed, and so he couldn't think of anything else. He couldn't talk about anything. He wasn't interested in anything else, and he just wanted to hear. And then this became a bit of a worry for his mother and father, as sometimes we've all experienced. Oh, well, it's nice to be religious, but don't go too far. Let's not be a fanatic, So this was happening, and this is, of course, the power of hearing, the incredible power of just hearing about devotees. I mean, actually, this whole movement was just built on that principle of hearing. Many of us, we didn't see Srila Prabhupada very much. There are a few devotees who were very fortunate to spend a lot of time with him, but the majority of the movement, we just heard about Prabhupada, and we were so drawn in and so fascinated that somehow everything manifests from that. So the value and the importance and the potency of just hearing about these great devotees and becoming attracted to them is you can't estimate it. It's so valuable. It can just catapult anyone forward rapidly on a spiritual path. So this was, Narottam became, I think the first quality that I would like to emphasize that was so profound in him was his love of the devotees. And through hearing, he developed such a deep love for each of these devotees that he just couldn't stop thinking about them and wanting to be with them and wanting their association. And this was not just a child fantasizing about meeting the Superman. It was actually something that stayed very deeply and very profoundly for his entire life when he went to Vrindavan and later. Both his friends and his teachers, we see it in his songs, we hear it in his songs, that expressing the love that he had for the devotees. So I think it's an element of the perfection of the Sankirtan Yagya, is to at least desire to have this kind of some deep love for the devotees. It can carry us very, very far. And so Narottam, it was like later in his life, Srinivas, Shyamananda, lifelong friends, bonded, and later Ramachandra Kaviraj, they became so close that it was considered that they were like the same soul in two bodies. So this loving relationship amongst the devotees is an essential feature of our performance in the Sankirtan Yajna. And so this, for Narottam, it wasn't just a casual interest, it became in him a burning, burning, burning desire that drove him. And it drove him to take very radical measures. We don't have time to tell all the stories, you can read the book, but eventually Narottam, there was no other way for him to go and meet all of these souls. He had to run away. He had to run away from home. And we can kind of imagine what it would have been for a prince, a young boy, somewhere between 12 and 15 probably, running away from home and running into the forest and running and running and running, because everyone in the district of Keturi was definitely going to be looking for Rajkumar Narottam. So he knew this was his one chance. And so he had to run through the forest, no Google Maps, no help, no food, no water. How do you do, for us, we get in a car, we drive here, we get in a plane. But what it was that drove him, so I think the second characteristics that was so powerful in him was his focus and his determination, that was very, very, very difficult thing to do. I mean, from one side of India to the other side of India, alone, a boy, to keep, I probably would have gone a few feet and went, oh, this is too hard. Where's the prasadam? How did he do that? It's miraculous, And so he was driven, he was focused, and he was determined, So these are, again, qualities and characteristics that were in him at a very young age and carried throughout his whole life. And, despite being focused and determined, he also was discouraged along the way. That it was very, very hard. And so at some point he was just crawling. He was so tired, so thirsty. So, where is Vrindavan? He was calling and crying. Will I ever reach there? Is it just a dream? And he was so weak that he just laid on the ground. And he looked up and he saw a young boy standing before him, holding a pot of milk and offering it to him. And he was shocked, but he was so tired that he couldn't even sit up and take it. He just fell asleep. And then in that dream, he saw Srila Rupa and Srila Sanatana Goswamis, and they smiled at him and put their hands on his chest, and they said, Narottam, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself has come and given you milk to drink. Please wake up and drink that milk and go on to Vrindavan. So, imagine the encouragement. So, of course, he got up very quickly, drank the milk, and was on his way. But you can see a little parallel for us, that we're also on a journey and we're trying to get to Vrindavan, and it's a long road for most of us. Some people maybe get there very quickly, but it can be a long road through dangerous and difficult terrain, and it may sometimes feel like we're even just crawling through the desert of Anartha Nivriti, and we're never going to reach the other side, And then, but Krishna always, if we stay somehow a bit focused and determined, there's always some, little oasis, like this. This is an oasis. Maybe we're all in our own worlds, struggling in our own ways, trying our best. And then, Krishna gives us an opportunity, something that keeps us going, that keeps us, going down that path, So this is, one of the amazing characteristics of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, that he kept going. And I guess it's one of the things, because for us, why is it so hard to focus? Narottam focused, maybe not for everybody, I'm talking from my own, why can't I focus? Even you're in kirtan, what is it that, turns your attention away? And I was thinking of the verse, every morning when we do puja and we say, I'm by nature an eternal servant of Krishna, but by misfortune, I've been inimical towards Krishna since time immemorial. And it's kind of a painful thing you have to say every morning, Inimical, it's a really strong word, it's really heavy. It's not just like, well, I just turned my face from you. I've been inimical towards Krishna since time immemorial, the one that we're supposed to love. So, that not wanting to focus, this habit of millions of lifetimes that, no, I'm not going to do that. But somehow or another we have to break through, and, these opportunities are fabulous for even making us see how much we're sometimes not focused, or sometimes how well we can actually focus, and how powerful it is when we do. So focus, yes. And so Narottam, because of his focus and determination, he did arrive. He arrived in Vrindavan, and his dreams were fulfilled, and everything that he wanted, and meeting all these great souls. And it was an amazing time in Vrindavan. Everything was blossoming, and devotees were coming, temples were starting to come up, and, books were being, written, and so much was going on that Narottam was in ecstasy. So on his very first day, on the very first day of his arrival there, he met Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Jiva Goswami took him to meet Lokanath Goswami. And they stood on the edge of the Kunj, and Sri Jiva said, this is Lokanath Goswami. And of course, Narottam had heard from Krishnadas about Lokanath, and he had a special affinity for his story, how he had come alone, with Bhagarbha Goswami, but the first to come to Vrindavan and to establish, to start to open up Vrindavan when there was nothing there. And so Narottam looked through, into the Kunj, and he saw this, powerful, effulgent Vairagi, and his heart was just drawn. And he said, this is my spiritual master. And Sri Jiva said, oh, well, surely you can get guidance from him, but he has taken a vow that he's not going to accept any disciples. And Narottam was puzzled, but why? And he said, well, he doesn't feel qualified. And that was even more puzzling. But how? Someone who's so great, how could they feel not qualified? And Sri Jiva said, that is bhakti. That is bhakti. And so it was puzzling. But then, they met, and Sri Jiva invited them back to Govindaji Mandir, and they sat down and they took prasadam. And as they were eating, Sri Jiva said, tell Lokanath Goswami about the mercy that you received from Mahaprabhu and about your journey here. So Narottam was very, very shy, but he explained how, and this, we haven't explained it, but that Narottam received an extraordinary mercy, that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had left his love in the Padmavati for Narottam to receive in the future. Now it's a pretty mystical thing that I had never heard of any other story like that, but I was kind of pondering it. How did he leave his love? And but then it occurred to me that, like Srila Prabhupada said, that his ecstasies are in his purports. So somehow he could leave his ecstasy there for us and all into the future for people to experience. So why not Mahaprabhu could leave his love for Narottam to experience? And so Narottam took it's an extraordinary story to hear. And at the end of it, Narottam took his opportunity, since Lokanath Goswami was there, and he said, but, these wonderful things happened to me, but I'm just like a boat that's just wandering in the ocean without a rudder, because I'm just like floating at sea, because I don't have a spiritual master, and that's why I want you to become my spiritual master. And Lokanath Goswami was very dismissive. And Narottam, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, the guru of everyone, has entered into you. What do you want from me? What can I give you? And so in a way, the two of them were both puzzled by the humility of each other. And that's like the next quality, to focus on, that, Narottam was looking, but how can he feel like he's so small, Lokanath Goswami? And then Lokanath is looking at Narottam, how can he think that he's a rudderless boat? Look at the mercy he received. But, again, this is the nature of bhakti, that it's really the prerequisite to just kind of get into the chanting of the holy names at all. We know Trinadapi Sunichena, it's like it's got to happen. We've got to move into the humble area. And that's not at all about, groveling and some false kind of, I'm lower than a worm in a stool. It's something, it's a vision, it's a condition of the heart. It's something that, Srila Prabhupada, I have one, he said, I'll say what Prabhupada said in a minute, but I wanted to say how that quality is such an endearing quality, that someone is so great and yet they see themselves as so small. It's a very beautiful quality, because usually people who are great, they're puffed up and they're arrogant, and that's not very attractive. But I remember seeing Srila Prabhupada in Paris in his quarters, I think about 75, and we went into his room, and he decided, it was late at night, he was going to just have a bhajan and they would record it, and there was just a handful of devotees. There was like 5 devotees in there, and Prabhupada sang. It was so beautiful. And then he sat back on his asana and he said, let's listen to the recording. So we all sat there listening to the recording. And after it was over, Yogeshwara Prabhu, he started glorifying Srila Prabhupada, and he's saying, Prabhupada, your voice, it's like from Goloka Vrindavan, it's so amazing. He was very profusely glorifying Prabhupada. And Prabhupada went, I just remember it so vividly, he went, oh, that's all right, that's all right. He was just like, so like a little boy, just no, that's all right. And then he said, oh, it is just like Padma Lochan. And so we were all sitting there, we didn't know why he said that. Who's Padma Lochan and why is it like that? So Prabhupada said, you do not follow? No, we don't follow. And he said, there was a baby who was born, and that baby was born blind. And yet, although he was blind, the mother called him Padma Lochan, lotus-eyed. And that's all he said. So then we're like, I'm looking at the other devotees, I don't get it. And Prabhupada said, you still do not follow? No. And then he said, because she loves him so much, that even though he's blind, she sees he has the most beautiful eyes. So similarly, you are looking at me. So Prabhupada was, this endearing and beautiful quality of just feeling very small. And that smallness is not anything to do with, low self-esteem or, but it's not disempowering. On the contrary, it's the most empowering emotion to feel, because, as we see the greatness more and more of Krishna, naturally we see how small we are, but we're happy in that. That's not an unhappy condition. So this was Narottam, had this intense and profound humility throughout his life that was very visible. He was a very great, he came from a great family, he received so much mercy, but he continued throughout his whole life to have this very profound and endearing quality, and I wanted to read what Prabhupada said. What does humility mean? What is it? He said made different definitions, but I like this one. He said that humility means you're convinced beyond any doubt that there is nothing, there's absolutely nothing, not your money, your family, your fame, your education, there is nothing that will save you except the mercy of Krishna. When you're convinced like this, then you're humble. So it's not some external something, it's what's in your heart. And it's a mystery in great souls to see that humility, and it is referred to actually as dainya by Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, that this dainya is, it comes along with prema. They're not two separate things. You don't have prema without dainya, you don't have dainya without prema. The utter, deep, profound humility, these two things, they come together. And when that intensifies, because there's layers and layers and different levels of humility and how we go deeper and deeper into things, but when these great souls, they go further than that dainya, it becomes imbued with longing, intense and deep longing, and this vipralamba bhava, which is the hallmark of our sampradaya. And this is Narottam's mood and emotion of his entire life in a nutshell, that he was always this intense longing, this intense humility, and we get it, we get that from his songs. Again and again, you hear this emotion, this longing, and this feeling. This vipralamba bhava means that, you're never going to arrive at your destination. This would be horrifying to modern-day motivational gurus. Imagine you have a mission that you're never going to achieve it. But, from a material point of view, you can't understand these very, very high sentiments, and bhakti is a compendium of feelings, highest feelings that nobody in the material world has any, they haven't got a clueless. But Narottam was plunged, really plunged in these feelings, and so his life in Vrindavan went on in great ecstasy until something else changed the trajectory of his life again. That Sri Jiva Goswami called together. He had a big festival. Nobody really knew what it was about during Kartik. He called devotees from Radhakund and Mathura and everywhere, and they came and they had katha and kirtan, and then he made the announcement, for so long we've been compiling these books here. Now it's time. I've trained up these boys, Srinivas, Shamananda, Narottam, and they're ready. They can go do this. And so Narottam, hearing this, is a tremendous shock. He thought he would be in Vrindavan for his whole life. And what he went through, he would have to say goodbye to Vrindavan. But this is the next quality or characteristics of Narottam, that the selflessness, that even though he was so living in Vrindavan for someone who has realization what it is to leave Vrindavan, but because of his selfless spirit and the mission and the helping other people supersedes even your own, spiritual pleasures. He was enjoying his life in Vrindavan, and so he knew that he would have to. He would have to say goodbye. He would have to go to Govardhan and to Radhakund and Lokanath Goswami and maybe never see any of these people again or any of these things again, and what that was like. And similarly, Srila Prabhupada, what was it like, to leave Vrindavan into the unknown, what will happen next. But, when someone is selfless, his heart becomes so magnanimous that, the other people's suffering and what's bringing others to Krishna becomes more important than your own spiritual pleasure. So the magnanimous heart of Srila Narottam, it pushed him to go and do this journey, which was going to be very difficult, crossing the country again with a bullock cart, and what to do, how to do this, how to spread, how to, going completely into the unknown. And Sri Jiva Goswami had the idea that he should return to Kechari, which is really not the done thing for a sadhu in those days. You don't go back where your family is and everybody knows you, but this was a good preaching strategy. Everyone would listen, so he went back, and then Narottam had to consider, as every preacher does, what to do that will open up the door wider and allow more people access. So one of the first things he did was to start writing his songs, which are, we just take them for granted. Oh, the songs are there. But it was a very brilliant, innovative, and creative preaching strategy that how can I bring from A to Z this incredible philosophy of Mahaprabhu to the simple village people? I have to say it in their language, and I have to give it in a way they can sing it. And, put everything in just a nutshell, just the way Prabhupada could do. That's expert, to say something really complicated, but say it real easy so that you just get it, So he started like that, and he also went on pilgrimage, and, to get empowerment, and also to scan the environment. Every preacher has to do that. Scan the environment, what's going on, what's happening. And he saw so many things as he traveled. He saw the old, whatever associates were still left of Mahaprabhu were burning in separation, that they could barely function. And then many things also, confusion, some splitting of different philosophical views. Many things were going on. And then Narottam, this desire grew in his heart that he just wanted to bring everybody together. He really wanted to bring everyone together, and it would solve everything, just to come together and chant the holy name. And, I have to make the parallel here that with the heart of Indradyumna Maharaj, who also some years ago thought, hadn't been to America for a while, and then he thought, I really want to do something to help. Let's bring all the devotees together. And, this is the way a magnanimous heart works, so we thank him for that we can come together and solve so many things just by chanting the holy name and just being together. It's just, things just, disappear kind of. And yes. So we don't have time at all to describe that major event, extraordinary event, that the first Gaur Purnima festival that Narottam organized and brought people from far and wide. And imagine, what if he hadn't done that? What if they didn't have a selfless and magnanimous heart? I mean, what if we never had a Gaur Purnima? So how that's impacted on us, we have to know and remember. These are wonderful things that they have gifted us. And so this big festival all came together with the help of Srinivasacharya and so many devotees, Shamananda, and devotees came from far and wide, and it was such an incredible event. And, the kirtans were roaring, and the deities were installed, and then Narottam, he had been preparing. He'd been, starting his own style of kirtan, and that was his preparation for the festival. And then when it came time, and Narottam began his kirtan, this style of kirtan is very slow, and it slowly builds and builds until the environment was just becoming tears were just starting to drip from people's eyes, the intensity of his devotional expression. And in the midst of this, like a lightning flash, the whole Panchatattva appeared in the scene of this kirtan. Not a dream, not everyone saw it. Everyone saw who was there. So this is why Narottam is called the king of kirtan, that the intensity, that all these elements in him had reached such heights that he could draw all of the associates of Mahaprabhu to actually be present. And they danced together, and then just as quickly as they came, they were gone. And, you know, the joy, the sorrow, the amazement, the combination of, you know, dramatic emotions that was flowing there. And Janavamata came, and she thanked Narottam that you have given the highest gift that anyone can give. Thank you so much. So these were just some of, so, you know, ultimately the last, you know, quality is really the intensity of one's love. That's the, you know, these qualities that we try to focus on. It's sort of like the ingredients or the recipe for, you know, how to cook up a good kirtan. You know, and we may not have those ingredients, but, you know, even if we appreciate them in the devotees that have, that is deeply nourishing. And in the words of Narottam Das Thakur, H.I. Goshai, Muritar Das, Tansabara Pararenu, Mora Panchagras, that these, the dust of the feet of these devotees, Narottam Das Thakur, all of our acharyas, the dust of their feet, that's my 5 kinds of food. That's what nourishes me. It builds up the spiritual body, it makes it strong so that maybe we can hear better, chant better, and, you know, just taste something that's there. So that was, you know, my intention in talking about Narottam Das Thakur. And of course, this is a Memorial Day weekend, and you know, when people in the world are supposed to remember those heroes who did things, difficult things, even sacrificed their lives for their country, whatever it was. I'm not really sure what it is, but for us, our Memorial Day can be to remember, you know, the great souls that have, you know, who sacrificed so much so that we could be where we are now and have such a wonderful association. So fortunate. So just to meditate upon that, and I think I'll end there, so won't anger anyone, and be on time for a change. All right. All glories to Srila Narottam Das Thakur, all glories to all his devotees. Hare Krishna. Oh, wow, we've got 5 minutes. Questions? Anybody have any questions? I can't really see very good. Or I could, I have 5 minutes. I had something that I noted down, which I thought was a very interesting description of the Sankirtan Yagya, how it differs from a regular Yagya. It's something from Lochan Das Thakur, so maybe I'll just read that quickly instead, because I thought it was really nice. I noted it down. So he's describing, Lochan Das, that, you know, in every yagya, usually you have a kund. And so in this Sankirtan Yagya, that kund, where you pour the ghee, that's everyone's ear. And usually you have a special spoon that you use for the yagya. And in the Sankirtan Yagya, it's the tongue. That's the spoon. And the ghee is the enchanting sound of Krishna's name and glories. So you pour the ghee of the holy name with the spoon of the tongue, into the kund, the ear of all of the people. And then that ghee ignites, a fire of bhakti in the heart. So, and then, when that fire grows and grows, then, symptoms manifest, crying, shivering, as the fire grows and grows more and more, and one becomes in an ecstatic state that's when real dancing begins. I know we do it, but like real dancing. And so at yagyas, there's always certain people, certain things that are supposed to be there. So there's always a stamba that's installed. And the stamba in the Sankirtan yagya, or the pillar, the basis of the yagya, that's Advaitacharya Prabhu. Because he's the one, he called Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he started it all. So he's the basis of our yagya. And then there's always someone who's in charge of the fruit of the yagya, and that's Sri Nityananda Prabhu. He's holding the treasure of prema. What's that verse? Nityananda Maham Nomi Sarvanandaka Garam Param Harinama Pradam Devam. That he holds it. He's the giver. You don't get it without getting it from Nityananda Prabhu. So he's the one in charge of the fruit. And then there's always a goddess that's invited. That goddess in our yagya, that is Gadadhar Pandit, who is none other than Srimati Radharani. And really the focus, ultimately, of our kirtan. And then there's always someone in charge of the people at the yagya. So that's Srivas Thakur, Adi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. He's in charge of all of the devotees. So important to understand that, in this yagya, this is what we're doing, how it differs from regular yagyas. And understand the tattvas, who's here, who's present, more than what we see. They have to be here. We're chanting the holy name. So Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Svarupakam Bhaktyavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakti Shaktikam. Everybody's here. We can't see them, but maybe one day we will. So I think we can end, okay? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.